It's time for Straight Talk Live with renowned radio pioneer Edna Howell Parrish, the television show and podcast dedicated to presenting thought-provoking issues and opinions with the goal of challenging listeners to re-examine their assumptions and expand their opinions and give thought to new ideas and concepts to better their lives and the lives of others. This is your opportunity to participate in making the world better. So without further ado, let's get ready for Straight Talk Live with your host Edna Howell Parrish.
Everyone, are you ready to make the world a better place? Seriously, are you ready? Are you ready? I know you are because our guest is ready too. Welcome to the show, everyone. And what's happening this afternoon is you, me, and my guest. We got a lot to talk about and to discuss this opportunity on Sunday. It's wonderful. And I'm inspired. I'm ready. I'm faithful because I stepped out on faith. And when you step out on faith, this is what you get. You get a show like this, an opportunity to give America more of what they want. Yes, people are talking, but are they really talking specific issues? Are they talking because of their emotions spilling out? A lot of that is important as well. So we'll talk about that as well today. Well, our guest today is a man who I met some maybe 22 years ago in Atlanta, Georgia. He says, this is what he says, quote, he said, "I am the baddest, I am the boldest, the blackest," did I leave one out? Baddest, boldest, blackest black man on radio. I'd like to welcome from Atlanta, Georgia, our guest today, talk show host. Here he is, the one and only. Welcome to the show.
Edna, thank you. It is indeed an honor on this rainy day in Georgia to be with you. I'm absolutely honored to be with you.
Well, was I right when I said that? Leave one out: baddest, boldest, blackest black man on radio.
There you go. We take all of those monikers. You know, radio is one of the great opportunities to sell. I really, pride myself on, kind of being a radio not purist, right? And so I came to radio very differently as a community activist. And so I know, as I say in one of the intros at my station, everything I have, our people have given me. Who I am, they've made me. Where I've been, they've sent me. And where I'm going, they're pushing me. And that has been true for my life in my career in radio. So everything I have, this community has provided for me a way, an opportunity, mentorship. And so I'm eternally grateful, and I'll never, as I tell people all the time, I travel the world over and I've eaten a lot of filet mignon and couscous. But I'll never forget how to eat butter beans and cornbread and fried bologna sandwiches. So
I know that's
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah,
yes,
I remember my roots.
Yeah, being a native of Atlanta, Georgia. Now, understand that you have been a council member in Atlanta, Georgia. How long did you serve on the city council there?
I served on the city council 2 terms, which is 2 4-year terms. And in that time, I had the great pleasure working under 2 mayors, former Mayor Bill Campbell and former Mayor Shirley Franklin, and working with them because the council is the legislative body. And so, but I came up out of the neighborhood. So I was what we call a neighborhood planning unit chairman, right? But I also worked my way through the politics at the neighborhood level. And I got the great honor of representing the neighborhood where I was born and raised. And so that was a high honor for me to be, a member of the Atlanta City Council, one of 15 members of the City Council.
Now, you say that education is is an equalizer. Why so?
Because here's the thing: my daddy was neither lettered nor learned. He had about a 8th grade education from LaGrange, Georgia, South Georgia. My grandmother even less. But both of them said when my grandbaby, I'll never forget my grandmother. He said, "Boy, when you get ready for school, I'm gonna have something for you." And my father made it very clear: when we graduated high school, you either going to somebody college or out to somebody's military. I'm the youngest of 6. And that man meant it. So Jesse Bozeman was no joke. He put a high premium on education. My brothers and sisters and I had perfect attendance from kindergarten to high school because he was just that he understood the value of an education because he had been robbed of one. And so I've been involved PTA and everything else, give scholarships because I know while it's not a guarantor that you're going to have a great life, it sure enough beats being uneducated and black in the streets of Atlanta or in any other city as far as that goes. And so I put a high premium on education because we do know it's the one thing what you know no one can take from you, and it's
That
just that simple.
seeking that education led you to Morris Brown College, where you graduated.
Well, I tell people the story. I was not going to Morris Brown. I had a mentor, Arthur Langford Jr., who was a graduate of Morris Brown. I actually had a full ride to play football at Georgia Tech and some other academic scholarship because I was also a scholar and an athlete. It just by chance, um, I met Arthur Langford Jr., who was a graduate of Morris Brown College when I was 17, and he was the youngest man ever elected to city council at 23, and he was a Georgia state senator. And when I was 17, he allowed me to be mentored by him. And for the first couple of years, I just carried his bag. And then I went to work for him in the Georgia State Senate and became a lifelong friend. His brother, Michael Langford, and I, who passed a couple of years ago, were dear,
Mhm.
dear friends. And my life was so profoundly shaped by them. Both of them graduated from Morris Brown. And so my next step was to go to Morris Brown to put all my other plans on hold because I wanted to be just like these two men who I admired. And I wanted to walk in their footsteps. And so for Arthur, I was elected to the Atlanta City Council when I was 29 and had just turned 30. And me and Michael Julian Bond's son, were the same ages when we were serving together. We were two of the youngest people on city council, but Morris Brown is where I landed. And I got a great education and became a great activist on campus.
Derek Bozeman is our guest this afternoon. We'll talk about you eating grits, gravy, and couscous. You traveled around the world, and I think it's marvelous that you talk about your travels in one of the stories that I read about you. You've been a little bit of everywhere, Derek.
Well, here's the thing, and I can tell it now because I'm beyond the statute of limitation and everything else. What happens is the mayor of Atlanta gets invited all over the world. And I had a very good relationship with the mayor at the time. And so the mayor would get invited. And when he could not go, they asked, can you send anybody? I
Yes.
remember my first trip to London, England, was to speak to a committee of parliament, right? I'm a 24, 5. I mean, 20. At that time, I think I'm 31, 32, right? And I was, and he couldn't go. And he asked, could you go in my stead? I said, man, are you kidding?
Mm.
By that time, I'd not really gone out of the country other than Bahamas on a cruise or something, but I'd never been on any official duty. And so I went, and the people absolutely enjoyed it. I then got a fellowship, um, working with another former mayor, Kasim Reed, who and at that time we were very good friends. He recommended me for the German Marshall Fund, where I went to study local and state issues throughout Europe. So I went to Bratislava, Slovakia, Berlin, Germany, and Marseille, France, Paris, for a whole month. And then I got another fellowship. And so travel seemed to be a part of what I did. It was learning and traveling. So I've been to the four corners of the world, and most of it has been on somebody else's dime, the best way to go.
Okay, Egypt, Israel. Language was never been a barrier for you, right?
The part of the story I left out in high school, I actually transferred out of my local school over here in the neighborhood where I live, in the hood where it's all good, and went to the International Baccalaureate program at North Fulton High School in the Buckhead area, the swanky white section of Atlanta. And I learned French, and so I was pretty good at French. Studied it in college as well. And most African nations a lot of them are francophone, French speaking countries. And so
Yes.
it made it easy for me to understand the language. But the other thing is, Edna, what I learned really is a lesson about people. And I try to make sure that I keep myself in a posture to learn. And most countries where you go, they want to teach. And so I don't be the snobbish American who go and say, hey, give me an English menu, talk to me in English. I try to learn enough of the language so I can navigate it and open myself to receive. Because you're in parts of Africa, you're going to understand Wolof and a bunch of dialects that you never heard. But if you show yourself to be friendly, but the one thing you find out that hamburger is universal around the country, around the world. So you just got a
Now,
point.
recently, I
Yeah.
understand just for personal love of our people. I say our people. You and your family traveled to Africa, and I was reading about that and watching some of the videos that you shared. I thought it was amazing
Yeah.
that you felt such happiness to be able to be there.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. On my 50th birthday, I remembered the first trip to Africa I took, which was when I was on the city council. When I turned 50 8 years ago, I just turned 58 in June. I said, I want to go back because it had been that length of time, 20 years or so since I'd gone. And so I said, I want to go back and I want to take using the platform of radio, the listeners with me. I just basically said, I'm going back on my birthday. And who want to go with me? Well, Edna, you are been in radio for a long time and have done
Oh
it very
yes.
well. In fact, your people from Cincinnati hit me to say, you gonna be on with Edna, the legendary Edna from Cincinnati? I said, yeah, I'll be on with Edna. And so I said it, and the phone would not stop ringing. I had no intentions of putting together a trip. But literally for about 2 weeks, people just call, we want to go, we want to go. And that's what made me create the DB Africa trip. And so who I take principally are listeners to the station from all across the country. Our first trip to Senegal, West Africa, we took about 103 people. And now we have been, I go every year around my birthday, which is June 9th. So we've been to Senegal, we've been to Ghana, we've been to South Africa, we've been to Egypt and Ethiopia. We have been to Morocco. And this year, and I'm announcing it officially here because I haven't made the official announcement nowhere else, we're going to Ethiopia and Zanzibar, Tanzania, and that will happen in July of next year. And then I have a small group of about 25 that we're taking back to Africa and Ghana. Ghana next year is having an atonement ceremony where Africans are basically atoning for their participation in the slave trade. It's going to be a very powerful,
Mm.
it's going to be a very powerful gathering, and so many people are coming. The people I work with, land tours over there, say, look, I know you used to bring these large delegations, but we only have seats for 25 people. And so I'll be announcing that trip as well.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Well,
Yep.
those of us that can't go, won't be going, we can do the walking club with Derek Bozeman. We'll stay locally and do walking club.
Yeah, you can watch. Well, I've learned the power. You and I was talking offline that it's wonderful to see you on this format. And it's probably me just being too moving too fast. Everything, if it doesn't happen online and if it doesn't happen in one of these portals, it doesn't happen at all. And so what we do is I take a young person as a photojournalist. So you'll see a lot of the videos and a lot of the stuff that comes back are from the young person we taken on the trip. And so, yeah, you can always go to dbafricatrip.com or dbafricatrip on Facebook and figure out where we're going. If you're interested in going, you can go to DB Africa Trip Facebook group and you'll see how to go and when we're going and all the information on it. And you definitely see a lot of pictures and everything else from the trips.
Indeed, I want our listeners to and watchers as well checking in to know a little bit more about who you are and member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, a 33rd
Yes.
degree Prince Hall Mason. I mean, so much about Derek Bozeman is really important for us to know, but that gives us the background as to why you are an advocate for people's rights, voting, anything coming concerning health, education, welfare. Derek Bozeman is the man for the plan.
Well, let me tell you this: voting is the most revolutionary act that you can take that doesn't require violence, right? We can
Yes.
change presidents, we can sit presidents down, and we can stand presidents up. And we hope to do that in November, right? We can, I understand that I sat every day when I walked into City Hall. It was with the awesome knowledge to know 60 years ago I couldn't walk across this door, right? My
Mm.
grandmother would have never been elected because she had to go through the back door. And I always walk with a sense of history, which drives my purpose to always do everything I can to keep the door open and say, never again are we going back to the days where your mother, my grandmother perhaps, was denied opportunities simply because of the color of their skin. They did not work any less harder than anybody. They gave a full measure to this country. I'm not talking, I go to Africa because that's where my roots, but my blood and my people's blood was shed here in America. And so we have a right to enjoy a full, every accoutrement of success that is afforded to any member of the human family here in, and as James Baldwin called these yet to be United States of America. I want to make sure our people get that. And so we see an effort to roll back our rights that are coming out of elected places. We see the devolution and the demolition of diversity, equity, inclusion with a preference to just white men. All right. And so everything that we have won, every gain, every victory that African Americans in particular have won in America wasn't because we sit down and be quiet and were quiet about it. It was because we were willing to get out in the streets, to talk about it, to write about it, to win seats in legislative houses, and not go in there to look at the quality of the drapes or who got on the nicest suit. But we went in there just like Bishop Henry McNeil Turner went into the Georgia legislature as a AME bishop and said something is fundamentally wrong. Like Julian Bond went in opposition to Vietnam and had to sue twice to be seated in a seat that he had handily won. And so, yeah, we have to fight. Unfortunately, that's a part of our story here in America. That it's always a fight for our rights and for our freedoms and our justice. They never roll in on the wheels of inevitability. They only continue to roll when we fight for them. So that's what I'm committed to, and that's who I am.
We have election for president coming up in November. The Democratic National Convention kicks off tomorrow, big time in Chicago. Uh, Trump or Kamala Harris?
It's very easy. You don't have a choice. Anybody who tell you we have a choice in this election is brain dead. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Kamala Harris is the only choice we have for all of America, to be honest with you. And we're not just talking about policy. Not since the 1812 have we seen an insurrection, a active insurrection. This is what this former president was responsible for. And it seemed to be lost because the Republicans are so afraid of this guy that they will not hold him accountable for anything. This man actually said, look, my vice president has been so disloyal, you can go and get rid of him if you want to. I mean, he is no doubt the most dangerous political figure, and I don't even see him as a politic. The man is just really a narcissist. Now, you can juxtapose that against Kamala Harris, a former prosecutor, a state senator, a senator. Again, we can take some umbrage with some of her record, but when you stack the two up together, there is no comparison here. And but for America and for the people that are in America, this would be a runaway election, right? You have a man who is a 34-time convicted, not accused, convicted felon.
52 times
Yeah,
felon.
52. Okay.
52.
And when you add on his sexual assault How do women walk into the poll and vote for him, right? And then you add on top of that the fraud that he has committed through his companies. You know, if you're talking about issues of morality, I deal with however you deal with people. If Kamala Harris had had 4 or 5 different husbands and 3 or 4 different baby daddies, she would not be in this race. And so, again, this race should not even be close. It should not even be discussed. But we live in America, and so you have one party that basically has cast their guy as he's the last best hope to save white America, to be honest with you. That's what you're looking for. That's what they're looking for. And
Mm.
his language of xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, his language of anti black, uh, it's appealing, and it was so appealing that 78 million people went out and vote for him last time. And I suspect that those numbers are going to be the same or either higher this time. It just means Democrats have some work in front of them, and they've got to get out and turn out the vote.
Well, people are excited, because of the crowds, because of the voting. People are just really turned on by Kamala Harris and her running mate. Um, I just think that people have to really pay attention to this. Right now, they're saying, oh, well, we got this made. We could slide on in. But is that not true? That's not
Well,
true, is it?
here's the thing that you got to understand, and this is a electoral college vote race, right? We know how 90% of the vote is going to break. We know those Republican states, and they are many, but the whole game on the presidential level is about the electoral college. And so we're really down to about 6 states, 6 or 7 states. This election will be decided by Pennsylvania, right? By Michigan, North Carolina, Georgia. If Georgia's in play for the Democrats, it would be a boon for them. In those 7 states that we know that make up the swing states, um, those are the people who are going to decide ultimately who gets to be president to get to the 217 requisite votes that are necessary to capture the presidency. Because we generally know where all these other places, California, Texas, and some of these other states, they're going to break for where they have traditionally Democrats or Republicans. And so we are playing in about 7 different states, and that's the whole game. And that's why you see Kamala Harris and her running mate, Tim Walz, they are not leaving those states, and neither is Donald Trump, right? And we learned a very valuable lesson during Hillary Clinton's run. When you take for granted you're winning, then the other people just don't show, or they don't show in as large a number. You got to excite people. You talked about the excitement factor. People want to feel courted for their vote. They want to hear you talk about policy for their vote. They want to hear you be specific. And that is going to be the challenge for Kamala coming out of this convention. Generally, conventions give that party a bounce, just like it did with Trump and J.D. Vance. And you should suspect that that will be a bounce coming out of this week's convention in Chicago. But we're playing in about 7 different states, and that's it. The rest of the United States is going to break the way it traditionally has, either Democrat or Republican.
In fact, today Kamala and Tim are in Pennsylvania, I believe, right now, chasing that vote. I mean, they're talking, they're speaking, but you see everywhere that Kamala Harris went. J.D. Vance was right behind her.
Yeah.
Donald Trump right
Well,
behind her, following. But they can't bring anything except to call her dumb or stupid or she didn't graduate from law school. They can't really say anything,
well, let me tell you this:
which is
the
untrue
worst
anyway.
and it's undisciplined, right? Um, and but it's Trump all the way, and so they hurl insults. I mean, he even did that within his own party. Ron DeSanctimonious, he accuses
Mm.
one candidate, says your wife is ugly and your dad is shot, was in on the killing of JFK. I mean, so it's just he cannot get out of that boat. And then these guys coalesced around and say he's a. If you go back and listen to what J.D. Vance had to say about this guy, it's some of the
Yes,
most.
yes.
It's some of the most insulting things that one could say. I do not trust him. He is a crook. But then you jump on the ticket because what Trump understands, I don't even need a vice president. I don't want one, right? But if I got to take one, y'all just throw somebody on the ticket because the vice president in this case adds nothing to the ticket. Trump sees it as he is going to be the emperor, period. That guy would never get an
Mm.
assignment if he wins. And so I think very clearly that's all you have. Because when you talk specific policy, um, talk about a specific policy that Trump himself put forward. The only thing he talked and got passed in the 4 years he was there, and you will come up wanting.
But Project 2025 is the playbook for his campaign, but he won't
Yeah.
even mention it. He can't even talk about it because it's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. But how can you hide that from people?
But and let me just say this, and that's why I say I'm the baddest, the boldest man in radio, because I'm just going to tell you, it is the best white supremacy doctrine since the Grand Wizard's Handbook of the Ku Klux Klan. Let's just call it for what it is. We clearly see that you're talking about getting rid of the Department of Education. You're talking about no federal protection for workers. You're talking about a bunch of pension reform and other reforms. Again, it is basically a manifesto for every machination of the far, far, far right, dark side MAGA Republicans. And the reason he won't tell you because he intends to do everything in it. I have to always remind you, here's a man who said we stand with the blue, but they beat police officers unmercifully on the steps of the Capitol. He did not make a phone call at all to try to give any aid or comfort to even the Republicans who were running around in the Capitol afraid for their lives while he saw people entering armed, and he basically encouraged that. We got to stop playing around with who this guy really is and say that everything in Project 2025, his handprints are all over it. Much of it comes from staff members from his senior staff, and they intend to do all of that. And white fragility and white survival mechanism makes this palatable to a certain segment of America. And they're eating, they love it. They love the fact that it exists. They love the fact that it's even on the table. Because what he's sending a signal to is I am that guy. No other Republican will say what I say. No other Republican will do what I do. Now you all make a mistake and let this black woman up in here, and then white America, as you know it, will fail to exist. And that's what his followers are saying, and a few handkerchief head Negroes who follow him too.
Those are
But
the ones I want to talk about. The handkerchief
okay,
head folks. How can they
well,
fix their mouth to say what they say that they're going to vote for
look,
Donald Trump when you know what he is going to do? Are
you
they in
know,
denial? Do they think they're special?
I had to reconcile some realities even as I travel into Africa. That's why this atonement trip is so special. The American institution of slavery could not have existed for as long as it was because most people think there were 3,000 slaves on a plantation. Most plantations had less than 50, right? But out of that 50, they had recruited about 5 or 10 who were present day overseers. They informed the
Mm.
master on everything that was going on, right? They let him know who the ones who were talking about running away and the ones who were docile and wasn't going nowhere.
Oh yeah.
Um, Juxtapose that to 2024, and you still have that mindset that whatever master need to know, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get close to him. And so you can't say you love this man policy. It'd be funny to me that a lot of so-called folks, even here in a progressive city like Atlanta, say we love his policy. Well, his policy was people making $400,000 and above. I know y'all. Y'all ain't making that kind of money. So the economic policy, the tax breaks that he's giving to the rich will not even hit you. You were waiting on the stimulus check just like Shaniqua was. And so, it is this kind of thing where, the Holy Quran said, two things they sought. They wanted wealth and nearness to Pharaoh. And
Mm.
a lot of our people want those same things. They want wealth and nearness to Pharaoh, and they will give their left arm and right leg in order to do it and be there. Right.
What would it take? What would it take for you to bow down and give over to Pharaoh for Donald Trump?
Let me tell you this.
How much money?
Look,
How much would you take there?
I tell people like my mentor and Morris Brown graduate, I'm unbought and unbossed,
I heard
because
that.
if I wanted it, I could have gotten it a long time ago. Right. And with a mouth as big as mine and a voice like mine, could name my number. But I got to
Mm.
live with my principle. There's nothing that this man could do except for me, but go to jail. I'm looking for the day that after he lose, that he would have to face the same thing that every other 52 count indicted and convicted felon would have to face, and that's jail time, because he is not special and should not be treated as such. Although the Supreme Court, which he has unevenly stacked with ultra MAGA conservatives, now is saying he has an immunity beyond anything that was ever constitutionally codified. They have expanded an immunity for a president to include any acts prior to any acts done while he is in office. In which it just makes absolutely no sense, because that
Mm.
does make him an emperor. That does make him a strong man, and that does make him extremely dangerous. Or any president who's coming behind that with an interpretation like that from the Supreme Court, it means I can do anything, long as I cloak myself in the office and the Constitution of the office of the president and Constitution, that I can just about do anything. When he talked about shooting somebody at high noon down in Times Square and getting away with it, that's the kind of immunity extended to him in their recent interpretation of the immunity powers that should be enumerated to a president.
And I believe in Cincinnati not too long ago, this past spring, he said there will be a bloodbath if
Yeah.
he was not
Well,
elected.
I'm hoping America, what they try to do, there's two things that drive people to vote: hope and fear.
Okay.
When President Obama ran, we had the audacity to believe that even in America, as racist as it has presented itself to African Americans, that this brilliant brother could have in his book, Audacity of Hope, he could dream that he could get there, right? We had folks like
Yes.
Edwin Brooks and others who made it to the Senate, but the thought that we could even come to have a brother be the president. And so, I am hopeful that we will continue in that trend. But we have the audacity to believe that is possible, and so we have to keep working towards it.
Let's take a visit way back to Reconstruction time. If people think that things couldn't be done to us that were done before, if we think that we got it easy because the Voting Rights Act said we can vote, let's go back to when Reconstruction happened and when black people were elected to office, black men,
Certainly.
and when black
Yeah.
men were voting. Let's see what happened
Right.
back in that day. We'll be back after this.
Most of us know our country fought a civil war in the 1860s, but less is known about what came afterward, the chaotic, exhilarating, and ultimately devastating period known as Reconstruction. It was a moment of profound change, with promises of citizenship and equal rights for all. One of the greatest achievements of Reconstruction was granting black men the right to vote. In 1867 alone, over 80% of all the black men in the former Confederate states registered to vote. 3 years later, Hiram Revels was elected the first black man to serve in the United States Senate, and Joseph Rainey became the first black United States congressman. Their election paved the way for more than 2,000 black office holders who served at every level of government during Reconstruction.
There are not many moments in recorded human history where a group that was so subordinated would, within the space of a decade, actually be integrated into the highest echelons of political society.
But the momentum wouldn't last. Black men's access to the ballot box, along with other key rights gained during Reconstruction, were rolled back systematically throughout the South. In 1875, near the end of Reconstruction, the 44th Congress included 7 black House members and a United States Senator. By 1900, only 1 remained, Congressman George Henry White of North Carolina.
By the time George H. White leaves office in 1901, he literally turns the light off on national black political leadership. No one will come behind him for an entire generation.
One of the cruel ironies of Reconstruction is that black people could claim certain rights in the 1870s that they would have to fight to reclaim in the 1960s. A sobering reminder that achievements thought permanent can be overturned and rights can never be taken for granted.
Dr. Henry Louis Gates. Rights once achieved can be overturned.
Yes.
Don't take it for granted. And some people are taking it for granted. I'm going to sit this one out. I hear a lot of people, I'm not going to sit this one out. I don't like Kamala Harris, or I don't like Donald Trump, so I'm not going to vote at all. Does that make sense to you?
I tell folks, look, regardless whether you participate or not, I'm beyond begging our people to go vote, right? I'm beyond telling them, our people died for your right. What I do is encourage folks to, regardless whether you vote or not, you're still going to have a president. Whether you vote or not, you're still going to you're going to be governed by the laws of the federal government, state and city governments. And so if at this juncture, you don't understand the value of your vote, if you understood the power of it, you would understand that they're not working 24/7 to political gerrymander, to put all these barriers, to strike down the Voters' Rights Act and portions of it, to not pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to restore parts of it. And so if you knew how powerful your vote, I said the power of your vote is simply understood by saying, look, the president of the United States, one of the most powerful people in the world, has only one vote. And so does the homeless man sitting under the bridge. You got one. And you get a chance to exercise it on election day. And so it's beyond me. I let other people do that, right? I don't even engage in debate with people who at this stage saying, I'm not going to vote. If you tell me I need a reason why, then I believe in voter education. Because while I'm a political junkie and consume this stuff daily, others will say, I don't quite understand. And the latest thing, well, it's the electoral college that really elects folks. And so we have to kind of educate people. And I think voter education is important. And I think even with some of these younger people, because what we're used to is watching forums like this. And I hope they will pick this one up. As soon as it goes off, I'm going to be sending it everywhere. Because what we have to make them understand, these rights were not just in the Constitution. In fact, the rights that was in the Constitution turned back all of those black senators that you saw. That was codified. So when Trump says, make America great again, I always ask, what period do you want to go to as it relates to African Americans? Do you want to go to Reconstruction and then go to when Reconstruction ended? Do you want to go to black laws and the peonage system, the convict leasing system that came right after this? Do you want to go to slavery? Where do you want to start and make black people understand that this when it was great for them? We can understand as a privileged white man when it was great. Y'all fought a whole war on what to do with black bodies. You were willing to fight your own brother and sister over what to do with black bodies. And so, I think that for me, Edna, I spend more time just telling young people the power that you have. If it wasn't powerful, they wouldn't work day and night to take it from you. And so if you just do
Exactly.
that, walk in there with a sense of confidence that in your line and in your DNA, there were some people who were denied. Always look at CT Vivian Eyes on the Prize. When they beat him, Joe Clark beat him with a gun, the butt of a gun, just because he wanted to register people to vote, not because he was going to vote. He was trying to register people to vote. And he got back up. And thank God that he did.
In your home state of Georgia, conservatives there and in other states, but in Georgia in particular, they're trying to decertify elections and remove voters from the rolls without a legal challenge. We promoted this week, and we said you were going to be talking about it. And so
Mhm.
I said, are they crazy decertifying elections, purging people from the voter rolls when and there's a website for this. Talk about that, Derek.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Well, that's been a challenge to the website, and they've kind of stopped and taken it, slowed it down. That was a website that you could, quote unquote, take your name off the voter roll, right? And so there's been
Well,
a federal lawsuit because what was happening, if you knew my birthday, and I tell everybody my birthday is June 9th, 1966, you go on there with my name and say, I no longer want to be elected. Once again, I want to take you back to the guy who's in the race now. If you remember the call he made to Georgia governors and secretary of state, he said he needed how many votes?
1,400,
11,000. No, he
11,000
said he
for
needed
yeah, yeah, 11.
11,870.
Yes, yes. Brad
11,800. Can you
Raffensperger.
find me
Yes.
11,870? So I guarantee you, while this governor had to say, now look, we can't find no 11,870 in the Secretary of State, because what would that mean? That means that 11,000 votes will have to be switched in the governor's race. 11,800 had to be switched in all of these House races, and that would mean a colossal. Some of these races were too close. The 11,000 votes would have shifted the power, and so the governor had to stand up and say, "We did not have an election that was fraud. You just lost." Right? And so, I mean, that's why they're fighting now. And so Trump comes to town 2 weeks ago and calls this guy everything, and
Yes, he
even
did.
talked about his wife,
Mm,
because he's saying you all should have stole these
11,000.
11,870 votes for me, and I would have almost been president again. And so, yeah, this is, I mean, this is what we're dealing with. And so, know that there have been purges. But the wonderful thing about all these civic organizations, I'm an Alpha, I am a Mason. All of us are going out here just as soon as they take them off, we're going to register them back. And so, what can
Mm.
you do? You go to your local NAACP, go to your local kind of organization, grassroots organization, your fraternities and sororities, and tell them we going on every campus, on every hamlet, and help to re-register people. We're going to sit out in front of Kroger. We're going to do whatever we have to do, because if we let them eviscerate the 11,870, we end up without two United States senators who happen to be Democrat and happen to be pretty good Democrats as well. And so I think our job is not to sit back and say, look at what they're doing to us. Our job is to be proactive and say, for everyone that you're going to take off the rolls, we're going to put two back on here through our voter registration efforts and our voter education initiatives. Because what I'm saying every day on the radio, check your voter status, vote early. We get a chance to vote in Georgia on October 17th. Vote early, because if there is a problem with your voting status, we get an opportunity to fix it before November 5th, right? If there's legal challenges, we have election protection. We have a bunch of organizations who are ready to litigate, sue, as well as help make sure that you have a safe and secure voting experience.
So did you think that Raffensperger would have thought that people were not going to challenge this? I mean, no legal action had been taken against him for creating this website, thinking that, well, my uncle died, so I want to go to the registration poll, and I mean the website, and I want to
Yeah.
deregister my uncle because he died, because I don't want anybody
Yeah.
voting in his place. Did that make sense?
Look, we've understood that we've had to fight. That's what I opened up with, right? We feel like which one was so failure? All my life I had to fight. And so while Raffensperger was not going as far as to say we had a bad election, what these Republicans understand, and this is the reality in Georgia, and this is the reality in many of these states that are kind of hazing purple, is that the demographics is changing. More than half of the population of Georgia now, which is about 11 million, live in the metropolitan Atlanta area. So you know what that means. It is getting browner and blacker by the day. And so winning a statewide election now becomes more fair seeming for African Americans, a moderate Democrats. And so, I think that instead of saying we're going to put this website up that knock people off, they're doing everything they can. We're going to purge the list because we couldn't just tell you, we're going to just let this website stand, right? But we're going to do everything we can. The Secretary of State's at their discretion can purge the list, and they know who is going to be impacted by a purge, right? And so you see all of these efforts. We're going to take out days of early votings, no Sunday votings, but one Sunday now. We had very liberal, a little bit liberal laws here. We're going to take up all of the drop boxes, which during COVID made it easy. People didn't want to go into buildings to drop off their ballots. So they set up these drop boxes that had cameras and were protected. They know the reality is they could not find a handful of legitimate cases where people had voted illegally. And when they did, it was with about 5 or 6 Republicans. One guy who lived in Florida, who was an attorney, voted here in Georgia. And so there was no prosecutable cases because if it was, the Republicans would have made them. You have not seen that here. And so you have a solution looking for a problem, and that is they want to thwart the election of Democrats by putting up all these barriers to elections. And so, that's what we're dealing with. And so we got to be
Mm.
as resolved as civic and community activists and others, and social activists, and social engineers, that when they take them off, we're going to put them back on.
Decertifying elections. Georgia also wants to be in that position where they could just say we're not going to approve it and
Yeah, but
hold up.
here's
Go
the
ahead.
thing, as we said, you can pass anything, but it has to pass constitutional muster. And this is the danger of the Trump years in office. And this was one of the weaknesses of the Obama administration. When President Obama walked out the door, he left over 1,400 federal appointments on the table because he couldn't get them
Mm.
passed. And that's at the appellate level. That's at every level. They were able to. Mitch McConnell was very smart. He understood the real game happens in the courts. And they block, if you remember, Merrick Garland, before Obama left office, 11 months now. This was back in like February of the end of his term, and he wanted to put Merrick Garland in there. And the Republicans blocked it, even though he had a majority in the Senate. And so they just wouldn't go for it. And we saw that Trump ends up making 3 appointments to the Supreme Court, unprecedented. I don't know if it have ever happened in history that one president makes that many appointments. And so you now have all of these judges stacked at all levels of the federal government. And these are lifetime appointments. The only way a federal judge gets out of the seat is for malfeasance and impeachments or
Oh,
retirement.
okay. Well, it's
You
Clarence
cannot
Thomas.
take
It's
them
your
out.
time to go, Clarence Thomas.
Well, look, I, I never in the history have you heard of a Supreme Court justice who was that dirty, who
Mm,
take money for his mama house, take money for a SU, hundred some $1,000 RV. His wife is a co-conspirator in the January 6th. She openly said, "I'm
yes.
providing money, support, and
Yes.
services." This is a unprecedented time that we're living in. I won't say something else, but I'll be respectful of your forum.
Thank you.
Um, thank you. So never. Do you think Thurgood Marshall and Miss Marshall would be sitting up there planning overthrow of the government, or taking all kind of bribes and money from billionaire financiers? And the only thing he's saying, well, these are my friends, so I can take, it'd be like I came to Edna's house and had dinner, right? Because we're friends. And this is the explanation you give. My friend bought me, paid my mama house out, bought me all of these things because we're friends. Now, I might
Yep.
would buy you a chicken sandwich, Edna, but I'm not going to give you a $200,000 RV to live in. Okay.
I, I think, I wouldn't ask for that either, for sure.
Okay. There you go.
It's amazing to see, what's going on today. And if Donald Trump would be so bold, I mean, not Donald Trump, but Clarence Thomas would be so bold to take this money and trips and everything else. What about the other ones? John Roberts, those that they haven't been shown their hand on what they have taken.
Certainly. And we've heard there have been similar kind of things. But here's the thing that, I would say, even for Republicans, um, we've never seen anything like this. When you
No.
compare this to the worst episode of maybe Republican modern history, even Tricky Dick Nixon, Richard Nixon, came to the conclusion, I am not going to be able to get away with the lying that I have been doing. I knew exactly what was going on at the Watergate Hotel. I knew
Mm.
exactly about the break-in. I've been briefed on it. And now that I'm caught, I'm just going to leave and resign office. I'm going to do the honorable thing. There is no honor with this guy, right? And there's no decorum and respect for the presidency, right? Most presidents respect the office of the president, right? Even if they have a tendency and wanted to do that. I remember when President Obama came into office, he had a BlackBerry, and they told him, no, sir, Mr. President, you are the president of the entire empire, this thing called the United States of America. They will have all of that information off of your phone in a second. Yeah, give his phone up. He did it, right? And had to get the one with the super encryption and everything else because we know you can hack phones. So again, but this guy just has no filter, and Donald Trump just really do believe he is above the law, and so far, he has been. There's been nothing that has happened to him up until recently, and the convictions in criminal court, and then some level of holding him liable for his fraud in his business and for the sexual harassment.
Mm. If Kamala Harris were elected as president, what can she do without having a good Congress to back her up?
Well, I think just the fact that she's there, we know she's a legislator. She has proven herself to be one who understands the legislative process. She served in the Senate. She's the president of the Senate. And so she understands the legislative process. She understands how to work dial. And I think she also understands fundamentally America, and that she is a transformative leader who has been pushed forward simply because America just could not go with the other guy. But I will tell you, her challenge is going to be to come forward with very clear policies now. Uh, you know, uh, we can get you there, but it's going to take policies, very clear policies, to keep you there. And so, that's the key for her. I think she's electable simply because she has done. She's not Trump, and we know how she would kind of deal with the Congress, and we believe now she is exponentially better than what's on the other side, and she does has a vision for America. Whether you believe that vision or whether you want to fall into that vision, what we're not willing to do is just, wait to see what another Trump administration will look like.
Mm. What do you think are her strong points going in if she is elected?
I think the fact that she is a woman makes a difference. I think there's a historical significance that goes with that. I think the fact that she has a record that people can look at, right?
Pardon me, yes.
And so I think at the end of the day, we're looking at a seasoned. Kamala Harris now has been in some elected office for about 25 years or so. And so we have seen the evolution of her policy making. We've seen her willingness to work with the Congress. And so I think that she goes in with a clear mandate, understanding we just need to restore the integrity. We need to restore America to a respectability, right? And we definitely don't need to do this warmongering that we've seen. Now, some of the Achilles heel for her is I think people do want to see a different kind of border policy. I think they do want to see something done about illegal immigration, whatever that is, right? And so, and the Democrats did put forth a comprehensive plan. But in Congress, you got to have another party to play along with you. What the Republican Party has done very well is consolidated themselves and say, we will not support anything that comes out of this Democratic administration. Trump, at the 11th hour, after a deal had been cut with Republicans to bring forth a more comprehensive immigration policy, said do not vote for it because it would make it seem as if the Democrats are making progress on that issue. And I intend to run on that single issue. And guess what the Republicans did? They left that bipartisan legislation die. They let it die for no other reason than that Daddy Trump told them to.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Do you think that once she gets in, that she's going to get the support that she needs from everybody across the country, those in the House and those in the Senate?
I think that you very well may see. I mean, the numbers are very close. If she sweeps in and have a coattail effect, you may see a flip. You maintain the Senate, you may see it flip in the House. We're only about 6 or 7 seats off, and so you know what you have left is some very powerful Democrats. You have two former presidents who are very active. Joe Biden the other day was as good as you've seen Joe Biden at his
Yes.
rally with her. Solid. You have President Obama. You have Hakeem Jeffries. We got a lot of Democratic superstars. And so I think that she can coalesce. But let me say this, it's still not a fait accompli because America and Black America too is a very chauvinistic place. Many of us have got to get comfortable with sometimes the best man for the job happens to be a woman.
Be like
Okay.
JD Vance. All women are supposed to be able to do is babysit, take care of children, and play with cats.
And
I
we
mean,
hope that he keeps saying that, right? We just hope
that's
that
all I can say.
he keep, because if it ain't in you, if you don't believe it, it's not going to come out. That's what JD Vance believes, right? And so women should take heed. You understand? This is what this man, you should be barefoot and pregnant and working over a kitchen. And if you, regardless of what your reproductive health is, regardless of whatever else, uh, if you choose not to, because ultimately that is a woman's choice, somehow you are defective, right? And so, I mean, that is the kind of psychosis that's running rampant. And nobody has checked that statement, right?
And we were chatting before the show started, and we were talking about a woman having a right to choose, and I was saying, what about a man having a right to choose? I mean, why did they stop with the women?
Because they know in this patriarchal society, you'll never put a piece of legislation that will regulate the reproductive health of men. If you told men you must have a vasectomy and put that on the table, we know why. And so it's very clear that this is, even that issue, if we're going to be honest about it, has nothing to do with a woman's right to choose. It has everything to do with white fragility and them saying our numbers in a democracy, Edna, this is what this issue is about. In a democracy where one man, one vote is the rule, the majority rules. And so if you look at the numbers, the white race is at a zero, and right now they're at a negative population growth. That means for every birth, two people have died. When you look at Hispanic and our Latino brothers and African Americans, that trajectory has not changed. And so just by the sheer birthing rate of Black and brown people, we have birthed ourselves into powerhouses. And Georgia is a prime example. In counties where we could not think 20 years ago about winning, Clayton County, because the population went there, Gwinnett County, where we certainly didn't have enough Black and brown people to win offices, Douglasville, which is now one of the blackest counties in America, where we were not on the city council, county commission, we now occupy every elected seat. And so the threat to white supremacy in white America is, if they just keep having babies, we will no longer be a majority inside the United States of America. And when you consider the history and what has happened to Black people and their belief that we are them, right? And that we will treat them like they treated us. But that is not who God made us to be. And so we believe in peaceful coexistence, but do not push us, because every now and then we will rise up and show our power and shut down America if it becomes necessary. That's what the young people show with Black Lives Matter movement. They'll walk out on the expressway and stop commerce for 2-3 days at a time. That they were serious, and they were the modern day freedom fighters. They just, as Fannie Lou Hamer said, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we're not going to let America just go on uninterrupted while we suffer these murders at the hand of the police, and we suffer all of these injustices in courts and everywhere else.
We'll leave it at that until the next time, Derek Bozeman. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Edna, it has been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity, and God bless you.
And for people that are interested in that Derek Bozeman trip back to Africa, where can they contact you?
They can look at my Facebook page, DB Africa Trip, and they can also go to dbafricatrip.com. The itinerary is usually up there, but the DB Africa Trip Facebook page, you can always check that out, and you'll always find the updated information. And I have told you all before I have made an official announcement. And so now I got to rush back and put the flyer out. So thank you.
Indeed. Well, as a man once said, truly great friends are hard to find, difficult to leave, and impossible to forget. I will never forget you, Derek Bozeman. Likewise,
and I am at your service whenever you need me. And you know what this means, right? You're going to be getting a call from me telling you, come on my show and be a guest. And it's wonderful to reconnect with you, and God bless you and Godspeed.
All right. Let me know. Tell all my friends in the ATL, I said, hey.
I will. They already know. I told you, even in Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a great fan base for me. They bring me up to Cincinnati at least twice a year before COVID, just some of the listeners. And so I always enjoy that city as well.
All right. Thank you. And for those that are just checking us out today live, we have the replay coming up, and you'll be able to check out the show, share, and let everybody else know that we're here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for tuning in to Straight Talk Live with renowned radio pioneer Edna Howell Parrish, the program dedicated to presenting thought-provoking issues and opinions with the goal of challenging listeners to re-examine their assumptions and expand their opinions and give thought to new ideas and concepts to better their lives and the lives of others. Join us next week for another opportunity to participate in making the world better. So until next week, live your best life from your friends at Straight Talk Live and host Edna Howell Parrish.